Hi guys, how's it going? Ivano here, and today I want to talk about which class bursts harder, the AP, PowerTech, or Engineering Sniper. And when we talk about burst, first of all, we need to talk about what does it actually mean. So there's different definitions of it. You can, of course, look at the biggest hit, which a class does, and you see at the end of the Warzone screen. And if we're looking at that, then hands down, Engineering has the biggest hit in the game. And, with the right circumstances, the class can hit up to 180k with only one ability. But that's not really burst, at least not in my definition of the word. Typically, when you talk about burst, you simply mean a high amount of damage over a short amount of time. And that's already the problem, because that's quite subjective, right? What exactly is a short amount of time? For example, in PvE, if you're fighting a boss for 10 minutes, then a short amount of time can mean, a burst window, as is typically called, of 20 seconds, where you try to complete a challenge and burn down the boss before it sets off some kind of enrage or something, right? But PvP is usually a lot faster, so we have shorter burst windows here. And that is because bosses in PvE typically don't use defensive cooldowns, but players in PvP do. And of course, in PvP, you also have healers who can save their teammates with a knockback, heals, or a pull. You have tanks who can guard their teammates, meaning in PvP, you typically have way less time to burst a target. So when I compare burst between classes, I always look at the time window of roughly 3 to 4 seconds, which is also the duration of most hard stuns in the game. So trying to kill a target in a hard stun, this 3-4 second window, this is how I define burst, at least for the purpose of this video. So why are AP and NG probably the two best burst classes in PvP? Well, it is because they both have a form of delayed damage. For example, AP, of course, famously has Thermal Detonator, which after you put it on your target will explode after 3.4 seconds. Meaning that you can time it to hit at the same time as your energy burst, which is your big auto crit. On NG Sniper, of course, you have Explosive Probe, and with the T0R0 tactical, that is also delayed damage that will only explode when you trigger EMP discharge. So basically, the damage of two abilities hits your enemy at the same time. And classes that can do that are typically the best for burst. Few words on how I test. I always test my damage numbers on the Rishi Stronghold, because there you will have the same stats as in a Warzone. Try it out in case you didn't know that yet. And then I always just hit the Warzone training dummy. Also, what I'm doing on both classes is pre-applying my dots. So for Engineering, I am pre-casting Orbital Strike, and I am, of course, putting Corrosive Dart and Interrogation Probe on the target, as well as Plasma Probe. That will add a little to the burst, because these damage over time effects will also hit during the burst window, and that sometimes can be the difference between a kill and the enemy barely escaping. So for Engineering, I am using the maximum burst build that you maybe saw in the video on my biggest crit ever. If not, check that out first. But basically I'm running Stimulated Package, 6k critical rating, and then there's one variation, because in testing I found that the level 39 talent, which gives you 20% extra damage on EMP discharge, is actually better for overall burst compared to the one I was running before that gives you 10% more crit. It will be a bit less damage on Explosive Probe, but makes more than up for it because of the extra EMP discharge damage. So you can see I'm putting all my dots on the target. I make sure that both of my relics are procced. That is very important. And then I go Explosive Probe into EMP discharge. That explodes for overall 200k damage. And then I follow up with series of shots, which will also detonate cluster bombs left on my target by Explosive Probe. Of course, during these roughly 3 to 4 seconds, all my dots are also hitting as well. And series of shots is also stacking the Electrified Railgun debuff, which is another dot that does additional damage. Overall, if we look at the combat log, we can see that this combo does a little bit more than 300k damage in 3 to 4 seconds. So quite a nice burst. And as I said previously, it comes in with a huge 200k hit in the beginning, and then roughly 100k in the seconds after that. On APPT, I am running my standard single target build. If you haven't checked it out already, check out my APPT PVP guide. I will link that also in the description below, of course. And here, for maximizing the burst, I am running the Veteran Ranger legendary implant that will give you a chance of triggering additional shoulder cannons. Then I'm also running the Overwhelming Offense Tactical just for maximum single target burst. The combo that I'm using is the APPT one-shot combo. Check the video that I made on that. You will also find it in the PvP guide playlist for APPT on my channel. I'm just leaving out the Carbonize because for the sake of this video, I just wanted to see what's the most damage I can do in 3 to 4 seconds. So I'm pre-applying my dots, of course, putting the retractable blade on the target before. And there's one more thing that APPT can do that other classes can't. And that's, of course, that as APPT, you have Shoulder Cannon. And Shoulder Cannon is an ability that does not respect the global cooldown. So you can use it at the same time as the thermal detonator goes off. You basically press the button at the same time as energy burst. So I'm just doing my combo, making sure again that both relics are proccing at the right time, and then following up with a rail shot. And if you do all that and you look at the logs afterwards, you will see that APPT does more damage than NG in a 3-second window. So in fact, I tested it 3 times on both specs. In engineering, the damage was varying between 314,000 and 336,000. And then for APPT, I got 430k, 459k, and 466k. So with all the buffs, you can say that engineering has the bigger one-shot potential, but APPT bursts about 30% harder in a 3-second window. And you can see that if you look at the damage charts, actually. So for engineering, it takes a little bit longer to set up the burst, but then you will hit this massive one-shot of more than 200,000 damage, and then afterwards it falls off pretty quickly. And if now we jump over to look at the APPT damage profile, it looks a little bit like this. The peak is almost as high, it's a little bit lower than NG's, but then afterwards the second and third global cooldown are doing more than NG. So APPT overtakes the burst potential of engineering, basically with the second global cooldown. One note on this is that, of course, NG can hit harder than 140, 150k. You have probably seen it in my recent engineering gameplay. But so can APPT. APPT can probably hit 500,000 damage in 3 seconds if you get really lucky with the crits and the Veteran Ranger RNG. But overall, I think APPT with all the cooldowns up simply bursts harder than anything else in the game. However, one note on engineering, I did not have any useful debuffs on the training dummy here. So for example, I didn't do any kind of preparation where I put an armor debuff on the target. Because engineering does not itself provide the armor debuff, but it does profit from it. So if you pair up the engineering sniper, for example, with a deception assassin or an APPT, then it will burst slightly harder than in my test here. But the difference will not be 30%, so the result will still be the same. APPT has better burst in a 3-second window than engineering sniper. That's it for today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this little deep dive on how the burst windows work for those 2 specs. If you want to see me make more comparisons, let's say which class bursts harder, Rage or Fury or something like that, let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.